one. All yours, Adriana.
All right, so thank you, Dr. Shieh, for taking the time to speak with me. As you viewed the interview, Dr. Cabrera was asked about a patient, and then that question led him to breaking out into, well, kind of calling you out, I guess. And again, just referring back to his words, he publicly called you a narcissist, a menace to society, a danger to the community. I just want to know what your I want to know what your reaction was to hearing this and what you have to say in response.
Yeah, I only had I'm with patients, I'm busy here, but I had a brief, you sent me the video, so I kind of had a brief look at it, and I'm very shocked that, a person of such his position as a public health, public position in the head of public health would call me a menace to society or dangerous to society, and then he criticized me for being on Guam for over 25 years and basically done nothing. I think those statements are very defamatory. And I think, ironically, that he called me last night. I haven't shared this with anybody, but he called me last night and I thought, oh, great, it's time to work together. But rather than working together, he called me and started to yell at me. And I thought he was going to call me about Mrs. Camacho, Shauna Camacho, because, she had a false positive test. But then he started to yell at me with profanity and F this, F that, and was very unprofessional. And, he said he recorded it, the conversation, and I hope that KUAM would, ask him for the copy of what he talked to me about. Because
that's news to me. So I don't know, you want to provide us with a little bit more information of what was discussed?
Well, I was trying to discuss, but he didn't even give me an opportunity. He just kept going on with profanity and kept yelling at me and things like that. And I said, listen, all I want to talk about is patient, because ultimately patient care is what I'm focused on. Shauna Camacho, has been affected in her life. And that's basically what I'm trying to talk about. But he called me all kinds of names. And he threatened me. He said, I'm going to go after you, basically, and very unprofessional. And I think he also said it in KUAM as well. Now, my opinion regarding what I've talked about in social media, what I've said in public, KUAM interviews, and I'm a very open person. I will, and I think I do have a right. We live in America, in a free society, where we're able, under the First Amendment, to criticize public officials, especially if their policies affect lives. And, Dr. Cabrera is a public figure. Public policy is made for criticism. That's how our society is founded and it's made. The First Amendment right allows not just me, but anybody out there to do such a thing. Now, I have the right under the First Amendment also to criticize, not just him, but the governor, the politicians, anybody who holds a public position, and especially public policy. So, but the reason I criticize is because they're inconsistent with their policies. What they're doing basically is looking at policies that FDA is saying this, CDC guidelines saying this, but when I look at these policies that they're doing, it's not consistent. So I think that's very important for them to understand if you really look at it.
Yeah, that actually goes kind of into my next, another question I had for you, because he had noted that a lot of the backlash you received was during the end of July, early August time when we were experiencing a spike in cases. And he mentioned that you were against a lot of public health response, including quarantining travelers. So can you tell us, what you were starting to a little bit, but what your stance is on their response to the pandemic and where you believe there are faults?
Of course, because when he first initially thought so, they were looking at a policy to allow tourists to come in within 5 days. Well, I criticize that because we shouldn't be treating tourists different from our own residents who have homes here. And if you have a home on Guam, and you arrive back here, you shouldn't be locked up in a hotel that's not your personal residence. You have a home to go back to. In Hawaii, if you don't get tested, you go home to quarantine. All I'm saying is that if you have a home here, you should be allowed to go home and quarantine. And that's inconsistent with what they're doing, because if somebody would test positive, they tell them, go home. And this is what happened to Shauna Camacho. Shauna Camacho, they say, was tested positive. Was a false positive, by the way. And her life is turned upside down because of this. And she got 2 PCR that was negative, but they told her, go home, isolate at home. They didn't tell her to go to the hotel. If she was that infectious, they would say, hey, we better isolate your hotel. She said, go home. You have kids, you live with your grandparents, go home. So those policies are inconsistent. And I think as public policy out there, we have a right as citizens to criticize those policy and criticize the public or health officials for doing those things because they're not consistent. And Dr. Cabrera also said the criticism that I've made affected him and his family. Well, has he considered that his policy has affected families here on Guam? Just taking Shauna Camacho, for example, has he considered how he affected her kids, her 4 kids, who can't go outside and play when the mom has 2 PCR tests that's tested negative? I mean, these are the things that he doesn't consider, that how he affects other people. He's only talking about himself. I have no special interest in this pandemic except to get Guam back on track. And I offered him an olive branch. And I talked to Mike Cruz last night too. I said, listen, let's work together, because ultimately, if we talk about unifying the healthcare profession on Guam, let's work together. But he's making it a personal attack. So I think that's the issue that I have. He says he's going to complain to the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, for example. And he's already said it on KUAM that this is personal. This is personal for him. He's going to make it personal. He's going to go and get me. He's going to make it a mission to get me. Right there and there, you know that this is not somebody that's, focusing on facts or things like that. He's making a personal attack. So I think when you talk about personalities, we can clash personalities, we can disagree, but ultimately we have to focus on what's best for patients. And in Shauna Camacho's case, I really believe that she has no COVID. Her 2 PCR should have set her free, but he refused to acknowledge that. And to me, that's a danger to people. If a public health official does not recognize a PCR twice, that should set somebody free. It's almost like if somebody committed murder and you have a DNA test, and that person is not there, and you still put him in jail anyway. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. So I think anyone who accuses me of being dangerous to society have to rethink what they're doing. I think my track record speaks for itself. But then again, going back to his comment on the KUAM, I'm actually very concerned about that, because
are you referencing the comment about making the letter of complaint to the Guam board?
No, that's not. See, that's not my concern about the letter of complaint to the Guam Board of Medical Examiner. The Guam Board of Examiner is made of people who look at these. I mean, he's already said he's making it personal. He's making a personal attack, and he says he's going to get other doctors to sign on to it. Well, he can do whatever he wants. Well, I think the island knows me well. Listen, my track record is better than Dr. Cabrera's track record. I have not been in a malpractice suit for the last nearly 25 years, knock on wood. And why? Because I take good care of patients. Dr. Cabrera, on the other hand, just Google him. He has been involved in multiple malpractice suits at GRMC. So, I mean, if we talk about track records of who is more dangerous to society, he really needs to take a look in the mirror. But when you call me as a danger to society, you got to be very careful. That is a defamation lawsuit ready to happen. So any doctor out there who's going to accuse me of being dangerous to society, they better be prepared for defamation lawsuit, because I am no danger to society. I mean, I have not killed anybody here. My record speaks for itself. So you have to look at that. But
can I ask also, Dr. Cabrera went so far to comparing your actions and conduct on social media posts and the memes. He said he was comparing it to President Donald Trump and Twitter. So I just wonder what your response to that comparison made.
Yeah, I didn't even pay attention to that part, because that just shows that he's trying to pull straws here and there, trying to compare me to President Trump. Oh my God, it's like, what's he trying to do? He's trying to pull everything to go after me. That is not something that a public health figure should be trying to do. What he should be focusing on is Shauna Camacho, how she's doing, and how this has affected her family. And the kids who should be in school got taken out of school for 2 weeks for no harm at all. But we're harming them because they're being cheated out of an education. And you got 2 PCR to prove that she's innocent. So I think comparing me to President Trump and Twitter, that is no comparison at all. If you look at my posts on my social media, it's pretty straightforward. I'm pretty open. I mean, I post things on my grandson. I post babies. It's really happy. I will criticize public health, because if I see an inconsistency in policy, they're open for criticism. And as far as the memes go, I don't have time to create those memes. Those memes are created by many of my patients. Shauna Camacho is the one that created the last meme about him making $268,000 of public health. And he's all worked up on that. He said, I used to get paid more than $268,000. You know, my God, that's pretty good for Dr. Cabrera to make more than $260,000, because Shauna Camacho is barely making by trying to feed her 4 kids. You know, and she's not working. Nobody's going to pay her back pay. So for somebody to talk like he's made $268,000 and then he took a cut in pay to take the job, I don't think that sits very well with patients out there who's suffering and for businesses who's suffering. So I think he needs to take a step back and really look at his own position and take a look. But if you're going to call me menace in society, I think my track record speaks for itself. Yeah. I'm not a danger to society. I've saved lives, many. I delivered over 9,000 babies on Guam. I saved many women who's almost bled to death at GMH. So I think, and I picked up several cancer patients, and I've still continued to save lives. So to say that I've done nothing over the last 25 years is really not just an insult, but that is really a defamatory statement. And, you know, we'll have my lawyers to review his statements, but I don't think the Guam board is in any situation to address it. He's already making it personal. So it's not like, what does he want to do? Live in a communist society, Russia or China, where we cannot speak against public officials? If they did that, oh my God, you know, a society would be falling right on the floor. And I don't think we should even live on Guam anymore if that's the case, right?
So with that letter, you know, we asked Dr. Cabrera, you know, if he could give us some specific details of what will be, you know, actually written inside the letter, and if there are what kind of consequences or penalties they're trying to seek through it. But
sure.
Do you have any? He didn't want to go into details. He didn't want to tell much about it. I think you heard that in the interview. But so you don't have any fears that they might try to revoke your medical licenses or anything? I mean, you mentioned your track record speaks for itself.
The Guam Medical Board is there to assess that we license physicians and how they practice on Guam. I have no malpractice suits on Guam. I haven't killed anybody. I've practiced good medicine. In fact, our standard of care in the clinic and my job at GMH proved itself that I save lives. I'm not a dangerous society. That's exactly it. See, that's the problem that Dr. Cabrera has. Is he's trying to create that I'm a dangerous society. That is dangerous statement that he just made. And it affects my reputation. Because basically he's calling me that I'm killing patients. I'm committing malpractice. That is totally not true. That is totally not true. If he can't take criticism on the policies that he helped create, and that's inconsistent, if we can't criticize those things in public or public figures, then what kind of a democratic society do we live in? You know, we just let our public figures go out there and dictate and control our lives? No. I think if he doesn't like those criticisms, he can't take it, he should get out of the public position. But I don't think that the Guam board is in a position to address that kind of stuff. It doesn't make sense. I'm no danger to society. Look at my track record. Look at my history of malpractice. 0, 25 years. And look at Dr. Cabrera's malpractice record over at GRMC. Check it out and see who is more of a danger to society.
Thank you, Dr. Shieh. I appreciate you taking the time
welcome.
and answering these questions. Is there anything else you would like to add?
I'd just like to add that I'm here to help public health. My criticism should not be taken as personal. I don't do things personal. I'm not like Dr. Cabrera trying to make it personal. My comments, if you really read my social media posts, are a comment that's criticizing inconsistencies in the policy, okay? Inconsistency that we can change and make better. False positives, let's look at that and change the policy to make it better. How do we pick those up? Look at how we affect patients. Shauna Camacho doesn't make $268,000. And to Cabrera, that's little because he used to make a lot more. But Shauna Camacho make no close, maybe just above minimum wage, if I think correctly, but it's terrible what he just said, you know, on the air in KUAM. So I think it really needs to take a step back and really evaluate. But my final comment to Dr. Cabrera is this. I message him and I call him and I say, listen, if you want to talk, let's sit down and talk. If you really want to make public health a better facility or make public health a better system for Guam, let's get together, put our heads together, and then work on policy that's going to help Guam. But making complaint, that's not going to help. You know, and making defamation statements against me that are dangerous to society, that's a defamatory statement that I think many of my patients would take personally. But I'm not here to get Dr. Cabrera. If he's out personally to get me right there and then, the Guam board should read it very clearly that this is a personal attack and it's a witch hunt. And, you know, consider me a whistleblower. If I find errors in public policy, consider me a whistleblower, because Shauna Camacho is considered a whistleblower because she was a false positive and she'll be set free. She should not be locked up in isolation. So is her kids.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shieh. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And hope you carry this all the way through. Don't just extract certain parts of it, okay? It took time for you, so make sure you carry it through.
Yeah, you got it.